and after showing how the reviews of the game can be quite misleading,
while also having some moments of truth, of course,
I want to try to answer to one particular question. Should you play Fear and Hunger? For those that still didn't understand, what we are gonna do today is trying to describe the type of game that Fear and Hunger really is, explaining some of the most important things you may need to know before starting it. Mind you that there will be some very minor gameplay spoilers. But now, let's start! In case you still don't know what Fear and Hunger is about, it's an indie game developed by Miro Haverinen. It's a survival dungeon crawler, and it's considered by a big part of the community one of the cruelest games ever conceived. The basic idea is, all the 4 protagonists available start with the same goal. For different reasons, their goal is to find a prisoner from a big scary dungeon. And that's literally it. You know, I kinda like games where literally almost everything is decided by you. You can decide what to do and where to go. It kinda reminds me also of old video game concepts like Digimon World 1. And there are a lot of possible endings which require multiple steps depending on how deep you delve in the dungeon, your party members, the difficulty mode you're playing on, as some of the endings are only available in hard mode. And all of this while meeting a bunch of different monstrosities which are going to try to obstacle you, such as some normal dogs, or some gigantic prosperous guards, or wait, some gigantic prosperous guards? Oh. I think it's better to address the elephant in the room immediately. The game contains scenes of very explicit sexual assault, not to mention the sexual horror that you only get warned about once you start the game and not before you buy it. And yeah, I can kinda agree, the game should really have a sort of advertisement for the sexual horror. Wait, the game is meant only for mature audiences? I mean, that's still not a... wait... violence and gore, but still, oh.
Self-mutilation to sexual violence.
But come on, the game should at least have a mature content description.
The game contains scenes of graphic violence and gore, use of drugs and alcohol, nudity, and scenes of sexual nature.
Huh, you only get warned about once you start the game and not before you buy it. There aren't a lot of these scenes, but if you are sensible to these kind of topics, there are various ways to handle it. First of all, for the most part, these scenes only occur after you lose a battle, so the first thing you may do is just to close the game whenever you lose a battle. This technically will make you lose some content, as these cutscenes won't usually give you game over, but it's a way to prevent them. If you don't want that, you could download a censor mode to have these scenes blurred.
For example, you may download My Bug Fix mode, which also comes with a censored mode. You can find everything in the description.
Or the last possible option that comes to my mind is just don't play the game. I understand this may be a very sensible topic to some people, so don't feel ashamed if you don't want to play because of it. Now that we took care of the important stuff, let's start from the basics, okay? The game is a survival RPG. Dying will bring you back to title screen, only allowed to either new game or continue from a save spot. The way to progress is to understand how zones are connected, gather supplies, and manage them as you proceed. And the most important thing, understand how to handle all the different types of enemies you will meet on your way, which is also one of the most usual points that discourages players from going deeper into the game. I'm gonna say it immediately. Don't treat enemies like traditional RPG enemies. The majority of the enemies of the game have the potential to kill you in 1 or 2 turns, dealing even half of your max health with one single attack, or in the worst case scenario just one-shot you. But be careful, why did I say potential to do that? Because in the 99% of cases, there is a way to prevent all the damage. Remember to treat the enemies as a puzzle. The game has a dismemberment system. Enemies are composed of different body parts. Some parts deal damage, some parts put status effect on you, some do...
nothing.
Some even do some particular attacks called coin flip attacks, but we will arrive to those in a second. Also, if you really are in a bad mood, had a terrible day or something, and don't want to spend time trying to understand the best ways to fight an enemy without taking too much damage...
I mean, in that case you shouldn't play Fear and Hunger.
You can just blindly try to run away. Not the most reliable choice, but a solid choice nonetheless. Remember that escaping is not a bad choice. This is not your traditional JRPG. And we arrive to... This is maybe the one thing about the enemies the most hated from people who don't know how to deal with them. Some enemies will use periodically with some body parts particular attacks in which there will be a coin flip. And if you fail the coin flip, let's say that in the best case scenario you will take a huge damage, in the worst it will be a game over. These attacks will be used every few turns, and now you may say, but Frapollo, how are you even trying to say it isn't unfair, relying on a coin flip to win or lose? Listen, there are ways to prevent them. The coin flip is present as a last resort if you don't do anything to prevent it. And I could just tell you how to prevent it, but I have another topic more important about this I want to talk about. Let me show you something. No item in the game tells you precisely what do they do, from the most simple health and mind restoring items to the armors to the spells, but they have a flavor description, and if you look closely, the description will give you an idea of what they may be able to do. Let's make a small and simple example, okay? Claw Fragment says it can be used to tie up small wounds and stop bleeding. What does that mean? Oh look! I have a status with a red tier on me, and I'm losing HP every turn. Maybe that's bleeding? Let's try to heal it. And it works. This is to tell you that knowledge is the most important thing. Knowing what you have access to and what you can do with that will be the best way to face the cruelty of the dungeon. So remember, if you want to play this game, read everything, in particular books, cause they too give indications on how to use different stuff. Talk to all NPCs, because some of them may have some suggestions on what to do, where to go, or how to fight maybe. Even the coin flip attack response is present in one of those things. Needless to say that this experimentation will require time. If you prefer a game that doesn't require so much time in order to understand the mechanics and stuff, maybe this is not the game for you. But also, don't exaggerate what I'm saying, because even despite not knowing the mechanics, if you find some party members and have some good RNG with the weapons or something, you may be able to actually finish the game without even considering remotely the mechanics. So don't hesitate to try out strategies or other stuff after establishing a save file. Wait, a save file? How do we save the game exactly? As you may notice after playing the game for 1 second maybe, you won't be able to save your game in any moment you traverse the dungeon. In order to save, you have to reach specific points, which are the bed in this case. Is that it? No! Apart from some exceptions, every time you try to sleep and save, there will be a coin flip. If you fail the coin flip, your sleep will be interrupted by an enemy present on that floor, basically almost forcing a fight unless you're quick enough to escape from the opponent. And then I'm gonna give you a little hint. Near the start of the game, there is one bed already available to you with a statue of a girl and a crow nearby, where the first time in which you sleep there, it's gonna be completely guaranteed and free. And after that, you can still use your capacity and knowledge on the opponents to completely clear a floor in order to save again. And since we are talking about RNG, as I told you at the start, this is a survival game. The main way you will gather items at the very beginning is through random crates and barrels, with a huge pool of items available. Wait, Frapollo! Does that mean the game is heavily RNG dependent? No! There are a lot, and I mean a lot, of events that will reduce heavily the RNG. Barrels always contain food, for example. Crates will have a very high chance to give you certain items if you don't have them, and are, for example, bleeding or you finish the torches. Also, across the dungeon there is a huge amount of guaranteed items that will help you. Herbs scattered on the ground, soul stones. The most powerful swords of the game are always guaranteed in one way or the other if you want them. Also, not talking about the best armors. The RNG in item pools can only benefit you. There will never be a way in which it can damage you. This helps a lot on managing difficult situations. And since we are talking about difficulty, the difficulty choices go from Fear and Hunger difficulty all the way up to hard mode, and then there is a secret mode which is irrelevant towards our discussion.
And I'm not joking.
That aside, I suggest starting in Fear and Hunger difficulty, where you mainly are able to emit light without relying on torches, which allows you to explore everything without caring about managing them. Terror and Starvation will instead require you to manage them, needing a sort of knowledge of the dungeon in order to avoid remaining in the darkness alone, because trust me, orientating yourself while you are in the darkness is very difficult. Also, some enemies will have more HP, and there are some other minor changes we really don't care about in this moment. And before you comment, well, actually, I started in Terror and Starvation and the game wasn't difficult. What are you even saying, you idiot? Listen! One of the complaints I heard a lot about the game is that it should have an easy difficulty to make everything easier, reduce the damage you take, etc. And while I disagree because this usually comes from people that don't want to invest too much time into figuring out the enemy puzzles, etc., let's try to make the game less punishing for the first time experience, okay? But in the end you can think what you want. If you were able to complete the game first try in Terror and Starvation difficulty, good job my friend. For a first experience I will always suggest Fear and Hunger difficulty. And since we are talking about a first experience, let's talk about which character is better to start. The way I see the characters is that Mercenary, good skills obtainable in the intro and in his skill tree, best starting choice. The Knight, very good as well, but may need more knowledge of the enemies in order to get the greatest advantage. Dark Priest, I consider it high risk, high reward, as the very early game may be slightly more difficult in exchange for a powerful endgame, but it requires a lot of knowledge. And then, joy of joys, we have the Outlander, has 10 more attack than other characters,
which is basically irrelevant except in some very specific cases.
And horrible skills except maybe one. I think this isn't a funny choice to take even later on, even though I'm starting to like him mostly because I use him a lot in my challenge runs. Wait, I can do this part better, give me 1 second, okay? And then, joy of joys, we have the Outlander, don't use it! Also remember, never skip the intro, because in the intro you're able to gather supplies and skills. And all characters have access in one way or the other to a skill called Dash, which makes you move faster. Always get it, it's one of the best skills of the game, available from the start. Alright, those basically were all the main points I wanted to bring up to explain what is Fear and Hunger and how does basic stuff work. Now let me give you some small tips to conclude. Time passes almost always. The game is full of events that happen with time passing. Time passing includes the time spent in the overworld, time spent even in dialogues, time spent reading. The moments in which time won't pass are in your menu, in battle, and in the intro. Keep that in mind when deciding to go to bathroom. Party members are valuable. Doesn't matter if they seem useless, an extra turn and possible mid shield during the battle is OP. Manage always hunger and mind. It's easier than it seems. As long as you loot everything and make good use of your save files, you will always have ways to restore them, or you will have a backup plan in the worst case. And the last suggestion is, download my bug fix mod. The game is full of bugs, and I know you may say, Frapollo, I played the game multiple times and I never had a single bug. Listen, just because you didn't, it doesn't mean that there aren't a lot. You got very lucky if you were able to dodge all of them, but the game is full of bugs, including some bugs that may potentially require you to reset your game. If you want to know more, I have several guides on my channel about various topics, or you can just ask here in the comments. But overall, since I didn't answer, I want to say yes, you should play Fear and Hunger, if what I said seems the type of game you would like, and if you want to invest some time to understand the mechanics. But anyways, for today it's everything from me, Frapollo94, and I will see you
next time.